Hollen.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Assistant Secretary, great to see you and in your new capacity. Let me first say that given the limited time, there's some questions I'm going to submit for the record regarding Cyprus and the fact that Turkey under Erdogan has made clear they do not want to go back to UN negotiations, which in my view is something that the United States should be strongly opposing. I also want to associate myself with some of the comments I understand Senator Cardin made with respect to Azerbaijan and Armenia. But I'd like to focus my questions on your current job and also the connection to your previous one on sanctions issues. And I understand we have some parliamentarians from Ukraine here. Great to have them with us. This morning in the full committee, we had Deputy Secretary Campbell before us, and I asked him about our efforts to enlist support from our European allies, our NATO partners, EU members, also partners in East Asia, with respect to imposing sanctions on Chinese firms that are supporting the Putin war industrial complex, not direct arms shipments, but high technologies that are helpful to them. Can you give us an update on how successful we are being in terms of getting our European allies to impose sanctions? Because as you well know, they're far more effective when they're done collectively than alone.
So a couple of things, and Senator Ricketts probed on this topic, so we'll see if I improve the answer. The first thing is to have a clear political commitment to do so, and I think we've seen that over recent months, evident in the NATO summit communique that said China is the decisive enabler of this war, and we hear this privately from all our European colleagues. In Europe, the EU did put its first sanctions on some Chinese entities. It was a difficult process, but they managed to get through to it. We'll continue this work with them on all of the ways in which China keeps Russia on the battlefield. We see our European partners saying that they understand China is helping Putin build a military machine that threatens Europe. Now, there's a subtle distinction here in that sanctions are sometimes difficult for Europe because they require unanimity, and that allows one state, either out of actual disagreement or posturing, to disrupt or delay an entire package. There is room to do some work around the export control space because that just requires a qualified majority, and so there may be some activities there. Senator Ricketts asked, when will we have the next package? And that's something I won't try to predict in this setting, but it is a process we work on every day and we talk to our European colleagues about every day.
Got it. No, I appreciate that and look forward to following up with you on that other secondary mechanism that you talked about that doesn't require a unanimous agreement. On the oil price cap that we've now had in place a couple years now, my understanding from talking to Secretary Yellen and others at Treasury has been overall we have succeeded in driving down Russian oil revenues. They still have an awful lot of oil on the market, and countries like India and others are benefiting from the lower prices. But I know this is always constantly something where there's efforts to get around our price cap, and that includes development of the shadow fleet tankers. And I know there's an ongoing discussion about whether or not we should take that next step, pursue more measures against some of the shadow fleet tankers. Can you talk about how we can make that price cap more effective? And I know it's partly in Treasury's jurisdiction, but also obviously in yours as well.
It's a all-of-government approach. So our sense is that the price cap drives down the price of Russian oil by about $9 to $20 for each barrel. That's kind of on average, and obviously different grades and buyers may have a different result. That's largely because now Russia has to sell to two very large buyers who are savvy negotiators, China and India. So with that, we're lowering the amount of cash available to Putin. The harder side of the equation is that we believe we are driving up the expenses Russia has to export as well, so there's less profit. That's more difficult for us to get our hands on because of the opaque way that Russia sells its oil. One thing that is true is Russia and Iran have built these shadow fleets. They're almost entirely unregulated. A lot of our work over the last years has been to try to build a system of regulation to capture these ships, because the way sanctions work is that it's the insurance companies, the crew registries, the flag registries who refuse to service sanctions violators, and these ships are old, creaky, and often without any of those protections. So we are layering in new requirements for ships. New warnings. Port cities are beginning to refuse to accept certain ships. India did with a particular Russian tanker. And just yesterday, the UK and EU, after a lot of discussions with us, made some announcements about restricting access for the shadow fleet to their ports. And I can get you more information on that. And I think those are the kinds of things we'll be working on as we go forward.
I appreciate that. As you say, you want to work at both ends of the equation, the expense as well as the profit end. Appreciate your efforts, and I look forward to following up. Thank you, Madam Chair.